What is up, Ivy Leaguers? Great episode for you today. We got a lot of football to talk about, so let's dive right into it. First off, noon game today, Oklahoma versus Missouri. Oklahoma versus Missouri could get interesting. Missouri plays at Oklahoma. Oklahoma obviously coming off of a great week versus Alabama and a huge win for them. And what does this mean for Oklahoma? Oklahoma's ranked number, 8 in the nation now? So we got to see they're a playoff contender. But Missouri ranked number 22. And Missouri, let's just say, they could beat Oklahoma, kick Oklahoma out of the playoffs. And that would also mean a lot for some teams behind Oklahoma that want to move up, such as Alabama or Notre Dame or Miami or a lot of other teams. So let's break down this matchup real quickly. Oklahoma obviously has a very good defense. One of the few offenses that has actually successfully played against Oklahoma is Michigan, and Michigan beat them. They didn't beat them, but they played well against them with a nice run game. So, and that's what Missouri does great. Missouri has Mon Hardy, a great rusher, who rushed for 300 yards last week against Mississippi State. So that'll be difficult for the Oklahoma Sooners, but Oklahoma's defense is great. Shut down Alabama last week. Really have shut down everyone they've played except for Michigan. So it'll be interesting to see how Missouri attacks that defense. The big key to that one is, can Missouri run the ball? If Missouri can run the ball, I think Missouri wins that game, upsets Oklahoma. That could be huge in just the grand scheme of things. In the SEC, look, it's a kind of an off week for the SEC. They call it SEC Cupcake Week because it's the week before rivalry week. Because obviously next week you have all the crazy SEC rivalries. You look at Alabama plays Eastern Illinois. I think Alabama coming off of a tough loss to Oklahoma. I was in attendance. It wasn't a great game for Alabama, but can they rebound? And I don't think that they're going to lose to Eastern Illinois, but I want to see them play confidently and play a great game. That will be huge. Just to look at how the Alabama Crimson Tide perform for the rest of the season. I mean, let's be honest. They're still in the race for the playoffs and for a national championship. If they win the next two games, they will be in the SEC championship, most likely playing Texas A&M. And if they beat Texas A&M, they most likely get a first-round bye. And then look at that. You're in the playoffs with a first-round bye, looking to try and win a national championship. And obviously, don't get me wrong, I think there's still a long way to go for Alabama to reach that. But Alabama's done a great job overcoming adversity this season, obviously with the Week 1 loss to Florida State. And that Week 1 loss to Florida State was devastating for them. It was devastating for me as an Alabama fan, but it was devastating for Alabama. And the next week they go out and they put 73 up on Louisiana Monroe, and then they go and they win 4 straight ranked games against SEC opponents. They play great for the rest of the season until they get to the Oklahoma game, and they lay an egg against Oklahoma. And I think if you break down Alabama's season, it's come down to they start off pretty abysmal with the loss to Florida State, and then you have a stretch of probably 5 or 6 games where they look like the best team in the nation, and quite frankly feel like the best team in the nation. I mean, they beat Georgia at Georgia. That is a difficult task, something that someone hasn't done in 33 games. So you look at that and you have to say, okay, well, this is one of the top teams in the nation. And then there were 3 games. They play at South Carolina, and they win by 2. They play LSU. They only win by 11. And then they play Oklahoma, and they lose to Oklahoma. Those 3 games were just rocky. They didn't feel like the same team that we saw against Georgia or against Tennessee. They didn't feel like the same team. And Ty Simpson seemed to be off. Really, the whole team seemed to be off. They haven't been able to run the ball. Since when do we talk about an Alabama team not being able to run the ball? I don't know when. But something seemed different. But now, let's see if the same kind of cycle repeats, okay? They poor game against Florida State. They go on, have 6 great games. Let's see if, poor stretch of 3 games, can they get that stretch right now? Because if they get hot right now, look at their next couple of possible opponents, okay? You have Eastern Illinois, That's the game to get hot. You go off, you get confidence boost. At Auburn, at night, that is not an easy game, no matter what Auburn's record is. The Jordan Air Stadium, where Auburn plays their games, is a haunted stadium. Lord knows what can happen in that stadium. Okay, so you get hot. Let's say you win Eastern Illinois at Auburn. Let's say you win those. You're starting to get hot. You're starting to get moving. SEC championship against Texas A&M, most likely. Texas A&M or Georgia. Both those teams are very good. Georgia is in my opinion, is the second best team in the SEC. A&M is the best team in the SEC. And the question comes: can you beat Texas A&M? You've already beaten Georgia, but can you beat Texas A&M? And Texas A&M's good, and they will have to play incredibly good football to beat that Texas A&M football team. But they did it against Georgia. They did it at Georgia, mind you. SEC Championship's a neutral site in Atlanta, which is actually geographically closer to Tuscaloosa. So, that plays a role in things, believe it or not. So it would be interesting for me to see that game. Now, they still have to go a long ways to get there. But let's say they get hot, win those 3 games. All of a sudden, you're looking at a first-round bye in the playoffs. Or, if not a first-round bye, you have a home playoff game. You have to keep getting hot at the right time. College football nowadays is all about getting hot at the right time. Look at Ohio State last year. Ohio State won the national championship last year because they got hot at the right time. They lose to Michigan in the last regular season football game. Guess what? They still went on and won, what was it, 4? Yeah, they won 4 straight games to win the national championship. That's great. That's all. I shouldn't say that's all you have to do, but that's the model for current college football teams right now, for the way the playoffs are set up right now. That is the model. You get hot at the very end of the season and you win. That is the current model of college football. And that's what a lot of these teams are starting to do. So that's why I'm not 100% sold on teams like Ohio State or Indiana yet, because we haven't seen them struggle with adversity. Or we haven't seen them have adversity, other than Indiana having a close game against Penn State. I haven't seen any adversity there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when there is adversity. Okay? That is why I'm not sold on them. A&M has had a little, but not a ton. Okay? They almost lost to South Carolina. They were down 27 points at halftime. They come back and win the game. That's an impressive statistic, don't get me wrong. But it doesn't count as adversity. I don't know. But my point is, saying all this, is that everything is in front of Alabama. All they have to do is play their game and win. All right? My grandfather always says, if Alabama wins all their games, wins out, they win the national championship, okay? It's not like they need things to fall in place for them to make the playoffs, okay? They're not like, let's say Miami. They're not like Miami. Miami needs some things to go their way outside of their games to make the playoffs. Alabama just needs to win. That's all it is. All it is win. But let's move on from the Alabama subject, all right? Because I got a lot of people that don't like the SEC that watch this podcast. So let's talk about your Texas Tech Red Raiders. Shout out Mr. Brown. Texas Tech Red Raiders. So Texas Tech's an interesting case for me because I think they're the real deal. I'm not going to say they're not the real deal. Obviously, 1 loss on the season. In my opinion, I think they will win the Big 12. But what happens after the Big 12 championship will be interesting to me. If they win the Big 12, they most likely get a first-round bye. Depending on what happens, they might not. If they don't get a first-round bye, they get a home playoff game. And the thing about a home playoff game in Lubbock is that would be nuts. But I just don't know if they're going to go all the way. I really want to say Texas Tech is going to go all the way. But historically, Big 12 teams have not performed in the playoffs. I mean, look at TCU. TCU went undefeated. No, they lost in the conference championship game. They lost 1 game in the Big 12 a couple years ago, and then they got blown out 63-3 in the national championship by Georgia. I'm not saying TCU did not deserve to be in the playoffs, but I'm saying there's a significant talent gap. The only reason that is different this year is because of NIL money And Texas Tech has a lot of oil money, and they've used it well. They've bought themselves a great team. So I will be interested to see what happens when they play a non-conference opponent. Now, I am not saying that if they played Georgia today, they would get blown out 63-3. I think they would actually, their team fits the mold to beat Georgia. But will it happen? That is the case, all right? Is the coaching staff in place to shape a team like that? Can you mold a team together to beat that and make a run in the playoffs like I just talked about? All right, Texas Tech has it all in front of them. Just win, baby. That's all you got to do. All right, Texas Tech. And look, we could get into the Heisman debate later. You have a Heisman-level linebacker that plays out of his mind on defense. You have a wonderful defense. You have a great – the offense parallels the defense really well. Their offense is able to parallel the defense enough and play off of the defensive success so that you can win. Texas Tech just needs to win, and you're in the playoffs. Much like Alabama, they're in a very similar situation. It's not like you're Miami. I really compare to Miami because Miami has a lot that needs to happen for them to get in. But Texas Tech doesn't. Texas Tech's just got to win. And I know, we'll talk about the Heisman debate next full episode, because that is a whole different debate that we don't have time for in this episode, because the last thing I want to talk about is the Lane Kiffin saga and drama. But finishing up that Texas Tech talk, Texas Tech talk, okay, whatever, I thought it was a funny joke. Can Texas Tech perform against a non-conference opponent? That will be the question for me moving forward for Texas Tech. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm saying it very much could happen, but I'll be interested to see what happens. All right, enough for that. Let's talk about Lane Kiffin. All right, then this will be our last subject for the episode. So obviously Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss ranked number 6 in the country right now. Chance to make a run at a national championship. Ole Miss is probably the best Ole Miss has ever been in the history of the sport. But all of a sudden, 2 big-time job openings open up in the SEC with Florida and LSU. Okay? And all of a sudden, sweet old Lane down there in Oxford, Mississippi has said, maybe I go down to Baton Rouge or Gainesville. Because guess what? In Florida and LSU, they got a lot of more money than in Oxford, okay? And Oxford, all right, I looked this up. Ole Miss's stadium holds 64,000 people, okay? LSU in Florida's, the Swamp at Florida holds over 100,000, and at Death Valley in Baton Rouge holds 102,000. So I just like to put that stat out there as I talk about this, okay? In Oxford, there's 64,000 people in that stadium. Florida, there's 100,000 people in that stadium. In Baton Rouge at LSU, there's 102,000 people. Lane Kiffin has been shopping his job around, okay? His family has been seen touring both the facilities in Gainesville and the facilities in Baton Rouge. And I'm going to be honest, all right? Lane Kiffin did this a while ago. He said he loved Tennessee and that he wasn't going to leave Tennessee, and guess what he did? He left Tennessee for University of Southern California and went on to be fired from Southern California, but that's a whole different story. I personally believe that Lane Kiffin will not be at Ole Miss next year. And if he does, we'll get to what he does. I think right now, I saw a stat today that LSU's offer was $90 million a year and $25 million, not $90 million a year. It was a $90 million offer for Lane Kiffin. Okay, that's all that money's going to Lane Kiffin. And he would get $25 million a year for his roster purposes. So buying players, basically. Ole Miss can't compete with that, money-wise, okay? Ole Miss does not have the same amount of money as LSU. That is a fact. And I personally think that LSU is right now the most intriguing offer for Lane Kiffin, okay? We know Lane Kiffin. He likes his money, but he also likes his family, and I understand that. But I think his family would be on board leaving Oxford, Mississippi, okay? And I say this. how much better can Ole Miss get, realistically? Okay? He really has to sell recruits to go to Ole Miss and go to Oxford because Ole Miss does not have the same facilities as LSU or Florida or Alabama or Georgia or Texas, okay? They just don't. They don't have the money. If he went to LSU, he would not have to do all that to get a recruit to go to LSU. Because one, they have the money, they have the facilities, they have the atmosphere, they have the college city vibe, they have all that stuff. All now, it's a tricky subject because what if he decides to go to LSU? Can you imagine what he would do there? I mean, he would quite literally have the most insane roster ever. He would do his offensive genius stuff. I heard a rumor that if he went there, he would hire Ed Ogeron as an assistant. I mean, this would be insane. Of course, a lot of details have to be in place for him to leave. But also, Ole Miss has made it that he has to make a decision the day after the last game of the regular season against Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. I don't understand that personally because he either says, okay, I'm staying, and then the rumors keep circulating while you're trying to make a playoff run, or he says, I'm leaving while the team is still trying to make a playoff run. I mean, I don't understand that because Ole Miss is still in the mix for a national title. They have a wonderful roster. Trinidad Chambliss, their quarterback, is a heck of a performer. Why would you force Lane to make a decision while the season is still going on? I don't understand that. Because he also, what if he says, I'm staying, and then let's say they lose first round of the playoffs, says, I changed my mind. I'm going to LSU. I'm going to Florida. Or he could say, I'm going to the NFL. I mean, I don't understand. Ole Miss is not handling it well because they don't know what to do because they know they can't compete with LSU's offer or Florida's offer. Okay? And it's going to turn into a mess, and what's going to happen is he's going to leave. And Ole Miss isn't going to know what to do. I mean, I can see it, the headline now. Lane Kiffin accepts offer at LSU. But also, the plot thickens here. Penn State is obviously in need of a coach. You know who they just announced their top target is? Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. They said they want to get Kalen DeBoer from Alabama. Let's say, hypothetically, Alabama loses to Auburn and loses a bowl game. And Alabama fires Kalen DeBoer, and Kalen DeBoer goes to Penn State. What job would Lane Kiffin like more than Alabama? He has flirted with that job more than he flirts with the undergrads at Ole Miss, okay? I know, that's a bit of a shot at Lane Kiffin. Sorry, I love Lane. Or don't love Lane, but I think he's a cool coach, a cool guy. Okay? That would be a massive plot twist if that Alabama job opened up. And it could open up next year. The Texas job could open up next year. We don't know. I mean, this could be a serious situation. So Lane Kiffin could say, yeah, I'm staying. And then next year, the Texas job opens up when Steve Sarkisian's fired, if he's fired. Or next year, the Bama job opens up if Kalen DeBoer's gone. Can he turn that down twice? I don't think so, personally. And I think, so it's a sticky situation for Ole Miss, and I really feel bad. And I say all of this to say, Lane Kiffin's situation is kind of indicative of what college football is today. And I mean that meaning they're forcing him to make a decision before the season is over, much like many college athletes are forced to make a decision whether to transfer or not before the season's over. And it's a mess, and it's not going to work because either Lane Kiffin's going to say he's staying at Ole Miss, and the rumors are going to keep circulating while they're still trying to make a playoff run, and that's not good for team morale, or he's going to say that he's leaving in the middle of the season while your team's still trying to make a national championship run, and that kills team morale. He's either going to go to LSU or Florida this year, or he's going to wait and say, I'll wait and see what jobs are open next year. If no jobs open next year, I'll stay at Ole Miss. That is what he will do. Okay? And I think let's lay out the percentages. I think it's probably 60% LSU right now. No, okay, I think it's probably 40% LSU right now, 20% Ole Miss. No, 30% Ole Miss. And then probably, 30%? Florida. I think that's probably the percentages, which isn't good for Ole Miss because you can't compete with LSU's offer. If LSU offered you $90 million and $25 million a year to spend on your team, along with all the other facilities, if I'm Lane Kiffin, I'm kissing Ole Miss goodbye and saying, hello, Baton Rouge, here I come, go Tigers. But I'm not Lane Kiffin, of course. I don't know what Lane Kiffin would do, but I think that's what he'll end up doing. In my opinion, I think he will end up going to LSU. If he stays at Ole Miss, great. But he'll just try and do the same thing next year. That's my take on it. Of course, what do I know about sports? I'm only a sports analyst. Been doing it for however long I've been alive. Who knows? That's it. That's all I got for you Ivy Leaguers. I know it's a long episode. I'll cut up clips, post them on Instagram and YouTube. Until next time, have a great day, Ivy Leaguers.